Now then, Charlie. Right, I've looked at these three essays, and we're going to start with this one over here. I think the to what extent was military force the most important factor essay is your least good essay. This one is by far your best, and this one is pretty damn good. So over to this one. What you've done is kind of your Achilles heel. I've identified. You've done it before, and it's the only time you've written an essay which is below an A grade standard is when you've over-analysed without backing the things up that you're saying with some evidence. So, for example, this you're saying military force was an important factor. Great, loads of analysis, but your only bit of evidence is harrying of the North. Well, as I said, if military force is the point that you're making, you need more examples than just the harrying of the North, which is not necessarily strictly a military force thing. It could have been included. It's more of a terror thing, oppression thing. But anyway, you could have talked about Exeter, how he was able to overcome the siege. He defeated Edric the Wild, the revolt of the Earls, Hereward the Wake. These are all examples of where William showed military force and overcame the rebels. Again, down here, castles, excellent analysis about the use of castles, the importance of castles, but as I said here, over analysis. He'll give some examples of castles. So, like Edric attacked at Hereford, unable to take the castle. Shrewsbury, unable to take the castle. William built a castle at Warwick that stopped Edward and Morcar, and there are other examples that you could read and find out about. And it's the same here. You've got his own leadership in response to rebellions, where he was right there at the forefront. You've got to give examples such as here. He was there. He did some decisive. He took some decisive action. And again, same here. They had a lack of English leader. We need to talk about some of the shortcomings of Edgar the Atheling. Okay, he was completely overlooked in 1066 initially. Waltheof, he could have united definitely the North because of course he's the son of Siward, but he flitted between collaborating with the Normans and resisting the Normans. And your conclusion is absolutely bang on, but outstanding analysis and understanding, not enough supporting knowledge, so therefore it falls just short of an A grade. Definite A grade analysis, but it's got to have that supporting information. I'm going to jump over to this essay over here because it's different. Because over here you've got, first and foremost, it's clear the fact that Earl Godwin had so much influence, blah blah blah. Edward was ineffective and weak. So you've made that point. Earl Godwin had that influence in the early part of Edward's reign. You back it up. You say how he let Sweyn return. Wasn't known, Abbess of Leominster. You've got marrying Edith. You've got the crisis of 1051. You've got that evidence to support what you're saying and to support your analysis. Though I think that your summary, your judgment here, needs to reflect what's being said up here. Maybe you could have said something like, initially Edward was certainly unsuccessful in dealing with the Godwins, particularly with Earl Godwin, whilst Godwin was alive. He had several problems. Something that reflects what you've said at the start. But this is an example, and there's plenty of examples in here where you make a point and you've got all of this knowledge to support it, but you haven't here. Such a contrast to the essay with no supporting knowledge, i.e. this one. This has a lot. So you can read through it yourself. You'll see, you make your point. The abolition of the earls, probably better to say the abolition of the earldoms, which I've made a point up here, was the first major piece of action that enabled William to begin turning England into a feudal state. And then you go through and you say about the earls and the examples, evidence, and what happened. Point here, William would then bring in a feudal act. William brought in, what not would be. He did it. But yeah, excellent. Such a contrast. Another minor point down here, the peasants did all the work. Their wealth was taken from them by the knights. Anybody who's above you in the feudal chain is your lord. So they're taken off by the knight, who is their lord, you're right, who then had their wealth taken off them by their lords, who were the barons, who then had some of their wealth taken off them by the king, who was their lord, and so on and so forth. But yeah, absolutely outstanding essay, especially considering the complexity of the topic and the fact there's not much to go on. Again, it's definitely up there between the 45 and 50 mark as far as I'm concerned, but I can't put a specific number on it because it really, unfortunately, is down to the subjective opinion of the examiner, which is just the world we live in, I'm afraid. But I would have it definitely up there. Here you've made a bit of an error because the whole point of this paragraph is saying how badly Edward dealt with the crisis of 1051 and how Godwin outmanoeuvred him. And then you say, therefore, the crisis of 1051 shows that Edward was very successful in dealing with the Godwins. I think that's another example of a little typo. You need to make sure that you reread your essays when you've been typing them out on the laptop in the exam, because you do this every now and again, and this in particular really knackers your paragraph. But yeah, that I say, again, A grade, probably 45 to 50. And I think just a general point across your essays, that having read all three, that you could consider is perhaps showing a bit more clearly how different paragraph subtopics link. That's something you'll find in the mark scheme if you have a look. E.g., in this case, in this essay over here, you've got the fact that the crisis of 1051-52 might have led to Edward having little choice but to accommodate Godwinson. Or you could link the first paragraph with the third paragraph and say, okay, he wasn't able to deal with Earl Godwin, and after he died, well, he didn't get on with Earl Godwin, but perhaps he got on a little bit better with Harold Godwinson. Just ways to link your paragraphs a little bit, and that goes across all three. And again, you never use the historian's quotes. Now, I suspect, because I've put this a few times, that you've decided that you don't need to, and yet by the mark scheme you don't need to. But I guarantee you that twice now I've had examiners say one way you could add the X factor to an essay is perhaps sprinkling in a little historian's quote. Now, you're that very good at writing essays, of course you are, but it might be worth trying to memorise just 4 or 5 that if it is applicable, that you can bob in your essays just to, as the examiner says, give you that little bit of an X factor, because it's certainly a good, if used correctly, a good way to analyse. And something that you would have to do when you go to university. But yeah, overall we've got a B with outstanding analysis. We've got a definite smashed in the A grade on these two. And in particular, I think this is one of the best essays that you've read, that I've read all year. So well done. Leeds are winning against Barnsley, so I hope the old Tykes pull it out the bag before the final whistle. Have a nice Easter, and see you later.